You're listening to a Soul One podcast.
Okay, we've got Father Quirk Part 1 or 2, depending upon how these are ordered. So welcome back, Father Quirk. How you doing?
I'm fine, thank you. Yes, Father Quirk messes up. That's what you'll eventually come to understand.
I agree with what Taylor said in what will probably be the second half of this episode before the first half, where I think it was a communal mistake.
It was a collective error.
Yeah, we all made a mistake. Basically, for those of you listening, probably now in order, we just recorded them kind of out of order. So you're getting our second recording, which is probably going to air first, because I've promoted on social media that we're talking about these movies. And next week we'll dive into our vampire kind of themed episode. But I gotta say, Taylor, you'll be able to back me up on this. Our fans love when this happens to us.
Oh yeah, and this is also proof when they say AI. And this is a very ignorant comment because I actually don't know anything about AI. But when people are so afraid that AI is going to take over, no, because humans still are part of the equation, and we're dumb and we screw up all the time. So I don't think we have to worry about AI. Also, this is a complete tangent. I used AI recently because I listened to a webinar and they said, if before you are scream about AI and say all these negative things, you should at least try it. Well, I tried it and it was wrong. It was not right. And so there's, again, proof that AI is not going to take over the world. But I guess if it does, we do have to worry that it's spitting out false and bad suggestions.
Yeah, I mean, most AI, I don't know what tool you've used. I've used
Google Gemini. Am I allowed to say that? Google Gemini.
I mean, they're not a sponsor yet. If they became one, we'll have to erase this. But I've used several AI tools over really the past couple of years. And the one thing I know about AI is it really still heavily relies on my input.
Yeah.
So it can still make mistakes because I can make mistakes. So yeah, I don't think it's going to take over the world. But I have a great AI assistant, Taylor, on my phone, which I'll introduce to you later. We'll do an episode where we have my AI assistant. It's a very interesting concept.
There you go. This is Father Quirk, brought to you by SkyGen.
Yes, absolutely. Yeah, we should all put out a statement now, just like we are all happy with AI except Taylor. So don't come after us, please.
That's right.
I don't know. Like, I don't want to. This is our episode's about Halloween, so I don't want to get too far down the rabbit hole. But are people just, and forgive me, people are going to be mad at me for this. Are people just not very smart? Because I've used Father Quirk. I've used AI in a work setting.
Right.
Per the recommendation of this webinar. It was a specific to our industry AI platform. And I'm like, this is not good. Like it didn't give me the content, the research that I needed.
I think I know the one you mean, where it was supposed to be really good on
it pulls from all of our documents and then shoots out, like, you can say, like, what did X say about X? And it would, and then so that's like what I put in a pretty simple query, and then it is spitting out information, and I'm like, no, you misunderstood the basic premise of my query if this is the information that you're giving, if you're providing me. So that's why I'm like, do people just not have critical, or I guess they don't know enough about the things they're searching to know whether or not the information that's coming out of AI is correct?
I think that happens a lot. Yeah, I do think that happens a lot. And I have to be careful with my prompts, whatever you prompt in AI, that you're even asking it, like you're asking it something very clearly. Because I've had that happen. That you're describing a scenario that happens to me all the time. So yeah, I completely understand that.
Right.
Anyways.
Halloween. We do have to get going on some Halloween stuff.
But you know what? For me, Mike, AI is the scariest thing right now in the world. So there you go.
Thematically, to Halloween.
There you go.
What movies are we talking about now? That's the question.
So this is a combination of two movies here, Deep Red by Dario Argento. It's from 1975. And then Peter Strickland's Berberian Sound Studio from 2012. And so...
Who says you don't watch new movies, Father Quirk? There you go. You got to move in for 2012.
Our fan next week says that.
That's right. So, that these two are paired together really because of the kind of giallo movies of the kind of the Italian cinema scene in the 1960s and 70s. So, Deep Red is considered to be one of the preeminent examples of the giallo movies, which were these slasher movies coming out of Italy with very kind of again with an aesthetic that is so kind of distinctive and influential as well to later filmmakers, almost immediately exercising a huge influence on later movies and movie makers in Hollywood in particular. But also then Peter Strickland's Berberian Sound Studio is about the making of a giallo movie in the 1970s. And it's just a wonderful kind of more recent movie. Peter Strickland's an interesting director coming out of the UK. I'm not going to advise you to watch some of his other things because they're kind of deeply weird. And as a priest, I cannot kind of encourage people to watch some of his other things. But I've avoided them myself, so I don't want you to think, oh my goodness, what's he watching? And how can he tell us not? Anyway, so Peter Strickland, but he's a very good movie maker in the UK these days. And so you've got these two movies, one which is highly visual. So although the visuals in Berberian Sound Studio are themselves very striking, but the visuals in Deep Red are I think that they really kind of punch you in the face, really. The filmmaking is gorgeous. The set design is gorgeous. And the thought that has gone into setting up scenes, it's excellent. But of course, the sound is so much more kind of significant. Although, again, the sound in Deep Red is very important. You know, the sound effects, the music, Goblin, their soundtrack is really such an important one in soundtrack history. But, you know, I was reminded of it. I'd forgotten actually just how good it is actually to listen to. I could almost
It's just good music.
It is good music. It is. So, but you know, each one has a slightly different kind of emphasis there. One heavy on the visuals, the other heavy on the sound. Although both of them are gorgeous in both mediums.
Yeah, and one of the things that I think we might as well dive right into it. And I think if we could start with Deep Red, because I actually didn't get a chance to watch Deep Red. So I'll be relying on both of you to really sell me on this. So I'm most intrigued there because I didn't get enough time to watch Deep Red. So why don't we begin there? Sell this movie to me. Tell me what you think and why you think I should watch this.
Oh,
that's tough. It's set up so I'll just
good sell there, Taylor.
That's tough. No, I'll start by saying I had not seen Deep Red. I've seen his more, I would say, arguably more famous of movie, Suspiria from 1977. Right. So in my mind, I thought, Father Quirk, that this was going to be a supernatural movie going into it, because that's like, Suspiria is a supernatural horror. I think it's been quoted as having like the scariest last 5 minutes of any movie ever made. But anyways, and so I went into this movie expecting a supernatural movie. And actually, Mike, this movie is a pretty straightforward murder mystery, I would argue.
Well, it's got a kind of slasher quality about it, though.
Yes, sorry.
So I think, you know, when you think of horror, you know, the kind of the broader genre, you know, it's in the slasher end of horror.
Yes. Yeah. But there is a mystery to it in the sense that these deaths are occurring. Who who's doing the murdering. And interestingly, it's a concert pianist. No, sorry, a jazz pianist
Right.
who gets involved in solving the crime because his neighbor is the first victim, I guess you could say. And then people around the case start being killed in pretty like in a slasher-esque way. And then the jazz pianist is paired with a spunky Italian reporter. And
Right.
the two of them are gonna solve this mystery. And like Father Quirk said, there's very for a lack of a better way to describe it, like very iconic imagery. So at one point, there's sort of this mechanized doll that's involved, which I read inspired Jigsaw, the puppet from the Saw
Oh.
movies. So, Father Quirk, you in both pairings that you're having us do over these next two episodes, you've picked very is the word seminal horror movies. Like
Right.
this movie is highly influential in terms of the visuals, the fact that he's using a band who like did all of very like Trent Reznor. And like now we would think, you know, Trent Reznor has gotten into scoring movies in the last 10 years, of course, of
Right.
Nine Inch Nails fan, Nine Inch Nails, that band. But so this is, it's almost, it feels, even though it's set in the, even though it was made in the 70s and set in the 70s, it feels like a modern movie, but that's because our current horror movies are pulling from this movie. Does that make sense?
I would say so. You know, I think that the whole giallo kind of genre, you know, if you think of Friday the 13th, which is only a couple of years after the making of this movie here, it is heavily influenced by this movie. So you watch this and you kind of think, I've seen some of this stuff before. You know, the way that it kind of builds. So it is. You're right, you know, Taylor. Suspiria is of course the one that a lot of people know about. And after the making of this movie, Deep Red, Dario Argento actually kind of took this supernatural turn. So it went from kind of the giallo kind of slasher psychological horror that is really a big piece of that kind of that whole style of movie, that whole kind of school of movie making. He went into the kind of the supernatural. So you're right about that in terms of the later one is, and a lot of people have come across that. But you know, I think the visuals of this are so important. David Lynch. If you think of David Lynch talks about how in fact he is influenced by giallo and the kind of the visual, audio visual kind of world of those movies, and how disorienting it can be when you're watching. You get these scenes, and the very meticulous setting up of the scenes and the filming of them, the kind of the way in which they're put together. So I think it is I think to go. You know, I've seen some of this stuff before. It makes sense because, in fact, you've seen it kind of recast and remade in by other people in homage to the originals of this time. So, I look, Mike. You know, I think it's Deep Red is a wonderful piece, a murder mystery. If you want to just watch it as a straight murder mystery,
Yeah.
it's a great piece of storytelling. And it's well acted. David Hemmings is wonderful as Marcus, the jazz pianist. You know, David Hemmings, kind of just in so many things over the years, a real kind of journeyman actor. He's wonderful at the center of it all. And but I mean, you've also got, so if you know, in terms of the Berberian sound studio. So all of those kind of sound effects that you had in that movie, you get them in Deep Red. Whenever someone gets a cleaver to the shoulder, for instance, you can almost hear the watermelon being hit with the knife.
Yeah.
Once you've
Yeah.
seen Berberian Sound Studio, it's like,
Yes.
oh,
Yeah.
that's how they do the Foley work.
Yeah.
You understand Foley work.
Yeah, yeah, that's a movie I saw when it first came out. Because it would have been because I think it was 2012. I think is what you said. Yeah, so that would have been just around. I had just been kind of done at school, but still very much like film and theater and trying to like see everything and wanting like behind the scenes stuff. So like the horror and thriller side of it aside, just the idea of like how they made and did everything was
Right.
was what fascinated me, what drew me to that movie. So yeah, that's interesting that yeah, you can kind of hear and make that connection to these kinds of films. That's really cool.
Oh yes, for sure. No, I think it's again. This is for the slasher. I think if you want to kind of put yourself in, where is the prehistory of the slasher? Of course, you've got Black Christmas here in Canada,
Yeah.
which is seen as being a really important kind of slasher movie. Although in fact, giallo is the precursor to even Black Christmas. I mean, there's a kind of there's a kind of myopia amongst some people anyway, who kind of almost imagine that the Black Christmas is the original slasher movie. No, it's not. I'm sorry to say. So it goes back into the 1960s and some of those earlier giallo movies there. So just to say, it's well worth kind of going back. I think it's called what Blood and Black Lace. I think is the first one. I think that's considered to be the first giallo movie, and that's so anyway. So well, go, make sure you do go back and watch it because it's
Definitely.
a really good movie. I mean, it's so I think Berberian Sound Studio is a movie that is what I would call, and this might mean something to people who've been to the UK. It's a Marmite movie, which means you either love it or you absolutely despise it.
Interesting.
It's Mike, and for our listeners, it's a Tyler Vance movie.
That makes a lot of sense. That our listeners will understand that. Well, then this is the first Tyler Vance movie that I really enjoyed.
Oh wow!
I have always liked this movie. I think maybe because of that layer of when I saw it, I was so just intrigued by the kind of the behind the scenes stuff of film that it kind of won me over in that way. But no, I actually do enjoy this movie. So this might be a first.
Right.
Yeah, I guess congratulations to Father James, and also in a very roundabout way, congratulations to Tyler Vance.
Let's not give Tyler Vance any credit.
So I found this movie. Okay, Father Quirk.
Right.
I agree with you that this movie is beautiful and very well crafted. Like this is like from beginning to end. This was a well-made movie. It just was a little bit too, in terms of, as much as I appreciate independent or art house cinema, I still like a relatively straightforward narrative. That's my personal preference. Maybe call me basic. I don't care. I like a pretty traditional narrative structure. And this movie,
Right.
I don't think you're going to get a traditional narrative structure with this movie, even if it maybe on the surface presents as a traditional narrative structure.
Oh, does it really though? Because you've got Toby Jones kind of falling apart, and he there's a blurring of the kind of the way in which his story becomes a movie.
It unravels.
He unravels. He personally unravels. He goes from being unable to understand Italian to later actually speaking in Italian, and then is dubbed in Italian. If you know that scene where he's speaking,
Yes.
and it's clearly that it's a dubbed voice, which I just love that kind of moment because it's so 70s. It's so, all those Italian spaghetti westerns and everything like that. You get the continental actors who are being dubbed in American English, so you get a little bit of that. I mean, I think that the narrative actually really begins to fall apart, and it's almost looping on itself as well.
Yes.
The way that he keeps asking about getting his reimbursement
Receipts
for his flight, and the number of times that this becomes kind of almost a kind of looping moment with the secretary, with the kind of producer as well, and then it turns out that in fact there was no flight at that time. You've got this letter of his with his mother that keeps coming back, and then the actress later on actually speaking the words in Italian, and he's understanding, of course, at this point. I mean, I don't know. So I'd probably push back a little bit in terms of narrative. As I said, it's a Marmite movie, and I fully get that it is one that just is mind bending. But I don't know that I don't think I would say it's a narrative. It's narratively linear. I think actually it just keeps looping.
I guess
Like a
why
chase.
why I said that, because it's the movie starts relatively straightforward. We have an American
Yeah.
sound engineer who comes to Italy to do the sound for a giallo horror movie.
Right.
And that's a very basic premise. And for the first little bit of the movie, you're just watching him kind of do that. So that's why I say, like, on surface level it's narratively straightforward, but then
Yeah.
when it starts that looping and that unraveling, that's when it becomes a Tyler Vance movie. And you're
Right.
like, is what I'm watching actually happening? Is it happening in his mind? Is he an unreliable narrator? Is something supernatural happening? So, like, that's where it got a little bit weird for me. But Mike, I agree with you. It was so fascinating to me. I'll be honest, I don't think a lot about the background. I like production notes, like who was cast, what happened on set, like stuff like that. But I don't necessarily think a lot about how a movie's actually made. I don't think I've ever thought about soundscape for a movie. Right. To see how you really, on a very technical level, you see how he's constructing the sound of the movie. And in that's part of why he goes crazy, because of the content he's forced to work with.
The content,
yeah. And so to me, like, that was utterly fascinating. Yeah. And sound was so well utilized in this movie, and seeing the different, the watermelon and the rotten fruit and the stuff. Again, that visual Father Quirk, seeing the fruit and him working with the food and stuff was very interesting. But for me, the narrative gets away from itself, and I know some people like that and appreciate that in movies. It just personally is not my cup of tea.
Yeah, and I can see kind of where you're coming from. I do agree that I think of all the kind of Marmite movies or Tyler Vance movies or whatever we want to call them, there are, I would say, more drastic examples than this.
Oh, one. Yeah.
For sure. So I think that it's closer to being accessible to somebody who's not quite into that, because I do agree. I think it begins in a strong, clear way. And I always kind of looked at it as, the intensity of what the character's going through, you have to feel that as an audience in some way. And I think changing up the structure and playing with kind of what you're expecting helps with that. And again, I think the focus for me and the things I remember from this film are what you just mentioned, Taylor, about the sound, the intriguing way they kind of created these different sound effects. The entire track of this movie is so well done that's to me what leaves the biggest impact. So I think there's still a lot someone can get out of it. If you are one of our listeners and think, oh, I don't like Tyler Vance movies either, this is probably a pretty good kind of gateway into those kinds of films. Like, I think that you can really still attach to a lot of great things. And at the core of it, to me, a brilliant performance.
Yes, Toby Young. Just to say, he's English rather than American. I just wanted to kind of just that, Taylor.
Did I do a slip of the tongue? I didn't mean to say
an American. So he's, but you know what? It's funny as well, and I think that you've got to allow for a little bit of humor in there as well. You know, when he arrives and he says, "I thought I was working on a horse movie."
I think it is. She's just not riding horses right now.
No. And then there's these scenes where he's got things like, he's stabbing a cabbage, and the cabbage falls out of the hole there, and so there are very funny kind of moments as well in all of this too. So it's not just this rather grim kind of falling apart of this rather kind of mousy, meek kind of man at the beginning. It's not just that. There's a lot of fun in this as well, too. So I think Peter Strickland knows when to let the steam off a little bit, just to give you a little bit of humor, just to kind of. But as I would say, the last 20 minutes of it, he's not letting any pressure off at that point. So you need to be ready for that. That basically this guy is falling apart on screen. He can't tell where his life ends, and this movie that he imagines himself to be in begins. And there's the scene, of course, where he really is pushed to torture that woman with sound in the sound booth, which is, I actually found that quite an uncomfortable thing to watch again. I remember thinking it was uncomfortable at the time. Watching, I'd forgotten it, and I did think, oh my goodness, actually, this is quite awful. And the fellow's there going, turn it up. What? So there's a little bit of Guantanamo Bay going on almost at that kind
sinister.
of Yeah.
So before we wrap things up, we're going to give ratings. Obviously, I didn't see Deep Red, so maybe we'll start there, and then we can give our ratings after. I don't know, Taylor. We've never discussed this, but I've always had this idea of Tyler Vance movies have to have a different scaling system, but maybe we'll think about that. But maybe both give your ratings for Deep Red first.
It's a see it for me for sure.
I would say it to see it. I'd love actually for someone like the Screening Room to do a giallo movie series. So if they ever watch or listen to your show, there's a plug.
Call up Wendy.
It's such an important kind of movie in kind of movie making history, but it's more than that. It's a great story. It's a really great piece of filmmaking. It's gripping as a kind of murder mystery adventure, and gorgeous cinematography. There's a scene I was just thinking about it just now, where the two of them. You remember right near the beginning, and they're both there. There's the drunk friend, I think Carlo, and they're talking about memory and how memory kind of works, and they're going in different directions from one another across this square, and rather than kind of like flitting between the two of them, the camera pulls out, and so you keep seeing them as in fact and you get this kind of sense of the two of them kind of separating. It's quite a well-known scene, and very well put together. Wonderful movie.
Well, Mike, maybe if we can do our first live episode, a little giallo double feature.
Definitely.
Maybe we'll make that happen.
Yeah, and then I can finally see it.
And then
again, Mike, just to say, it's on. No sponsorship here from Apple TV or anything like that, but it's on actually sale right now on Apple TV.
I have Apple TV. I will check that out.
It's a good price right now. So if you want to buy it, it's not a bad way to get it.
And how do you say it? Berberian Sound Studio?
I'd say Berberian myself.
Berberian
Sound Studio. Yeah, it's a see it for me.
Yeah.
Well, obviously, Father Quirk says it's a see it. So yeah, to me, okay. So this is where the different Tyler Vance scale comes in, right? Taylor reviewing this, it's a skip it, because it just, narratively, I watch movies for the story as much as for the actual craft. So to me, the story wasn't there, so it's a skip it. For if I'm giving it a Tyler Vance rating, it is an accessible Tyler Vance movie. I think it's very well crafted, and there is enough there that I think people would enjoy it. So if I'm wearing my Tyler Vance hat, it's a see it.
Well, there you go. So thank you, Father Quirk, for doing 2 episodes with us in whatever order this ends up being out there. Thank you for sticking around and doing 2 episodes. We really appreciate that.
It's a pleasure. It's a pleasure. Happy Halloween, everyone.
Yeah, happy Halloween to everybody, whenever that is, or happy Halloween season. You'll hear from us again next week.
Go see some movies.
Thank you for listening to You Had Me at Skip It, a Soul One Arts Inc. podcast. This podcast is produced by Mike Shepard and Austin Spinner Summer. It is a project of Soul One Arts Inc. To learn more about Soul One and all the great work that Soul One is doing, in the arts community, especially in film, theater, and other performing arts, visit soul1arts.ca. You can contribute to this podcast by visiting soul1arts.ca and going to the podcast tab. You'll find all the information on You Have Me at Skip It and how you can get your questions read on air each week. Thank you again for listening.